Robert Kiyosaki was quoted as saying, "It's not how much money you make, but how much you keep and how hard it works for you." I think as entrepreneurs, this is a critical concept for us to understand. Our special guest today is going to dig into and help us level up our financial decision making so we can keep more of the money we make and start building wealth today. Hi, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing, where we believe marketing shouldn't be difficult. All you need is the right plan. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I am really excited to have with me Rennie Gabriel from Wealth on Any Income. Rennie, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, you got it, Tim. So glad to see you again.
Yes, likewise. And I know I had the pleasure of being on your podcast the last month or so. So it's nice to switch sides of the mic, but you did prep me ahead of time. You're gonna put me on the spot during this conversation. So I'm on my toes.
Yeah. It's a two-way street.
Yes. So before we jump into leveling up our financial decision making, I want to ask you some rapid fire questions just to help us get to know you. You good to go?
Yep, I'm ready.
Awesome. When you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
Actually, I like to spend it being physical, going jogging with my dogs, bike riding, trying to figure out how things work.
Awesome. Hey, you stop moving and the body starts to break down, right?
Yep.
What's your hidden talent?
Probably the hidden talent is I can't. My wife laughs at this one, but she'll have a pan with a bunch of food in it, and she'll say, "Okay, what size container do I use?" And I look at this massive food. I look at the containers we have, and they're almost always a perfect fit.
That's a great hidden talent. My mom had that hidden talent. I was always amazed. I'm like, how did she know that was going to fit perfectly? I never thought that was going to fit. It did every time.
Yep.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Probably the best piece of advice wasn't what I was given as much as what I discovered. And it really has to do with success in business or relationships or wealth creation. It's that it's a team sport, not a solo sport.
Awesome. What's one thing about you that surprises people?
That I ride motorcycles instead of drive cars.
Well, it's good you live in California then, huh?
Yeah, 11 months a year. It's cool.
What does success mean to you?
Success probably has more to do with significance and impact than anything else. It's not about how much money you've got, but what's the impact you've had on other people. And I talk about that as significance.
I love that. You know, it's interesting. I saw a quote a while ago, or was a study of some kind where they said like, after like $75,000 a year, you start going over $75,000 a year in income, it really becomes insignificant. It doesn't matter that much to people. And I don't know how they exactly came up with that number, but I think most people that don't have money think that they need it. And then when they get a bunch, they realize that it's not as big of a deal as they thought it once was.
It depends. We can talk about, whether money corrupts people or they were corrupt to begin with.
Yeah. I look forward to digging into that. Where's your happy place?
Well, it's one, being alone, and two, it's being at the beach.
Okay. Awesome. What qualities do you value in the people with whom you spend time?
They have to have a high level of integrity. They have to be open. They have to be people who desire making an impact on other people. And, financially, they're generally successful as well.
Great. So tell us a little bit more about you. You have an interesting backstory. You're now, you're putting out the word on Wealth on Any Income, where you're donating 100% of the profits to charity. So, some people are going to, ask, well, what, are you doing this out of the goodness of your heart? How do you actually make money? So tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, one of those that you asked was a great question, because yeah, when I tell people that I donate 100% of the profits to the charity Shelter to Soldier, and I've got to talk about them, they'll say, "Well, wait a second. If you're donating 100% of your profits, how do you live?" Well, it's simple. The business is not what I'm living on. It's how I got to be able to do that personally that makes the difference.
Yeah.
And you talk about a backstory. Um, it's a little bit embarrassing, but I was a chartered life underwriter, certified financial planner, and struggled with handling money most of my life. And what I discovered is that certified financial planners are taught how to help other people handle their money more effectively, or reduce taxes, or protect their wealth. There was nothing about the foundational aspects of handling money, nor how to create wealth. And so, it's like the shoe repairman might know how to repair shoes, but it
Yes.
doesn't mean he's walking around with, or his children are walking around with decent shoes.
I was going to say that it's like the cobbler that has no shoes.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay. So, yeah. And so it was, we'll talk about this concept. Hopefully we'll touch on it. It's a 5,000-year-old concept. This is where I'll put you on the spot and ask you to define something. So I can't talk much about it now, but I tried it a few times. It didn't work until I was 50, and looking down the road 15 years after a couple divorces and a business failure, and I'm flat broke. So I said, okay, what do wealthy people do so that they create wealth? And I used an old Tony Robbins expression, model what works. And I copied what I knew wealthy people were doing. And within 8 years, I had a significant enough net worth. I no longer had to work for a living.
Awesome.
So that's why I can donate 100% to supporting other people to handle money powerfully, to charity, because I don't have to work for a living.
That's a great place to be, right?
Yeah. It's cool. I like it.
Yes. So you kind of touched on this a little bit. Let's dig into this. Like, is there something that the wealthy people know, some secrets that the rest of everybody else doesn't?
Yes, there are. As a matter of fact, I say primarily there's 3 of them. And I use the acronym AFI for those 3 secrets. And it has nothing to do with the American Film Institute. AFI stands for attitude, forms, and investments. And I'll briefly give you a description of those 3. Attitude. I've got one of the books I wrote recently is The Attitudes of the Wealthy, and there's 32 of them in there, but I'll give you an example of one. And this is where I get to put you on the spot.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Have you heard of the expression, pay yourself first?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me what it means?
My understanding of it is your money comes in before you pay anything else out. You pull out a certain percentage. The percentage depends on who you talk to.
Yeah.
I've seen that anywhere in the 10 to 20% range. You take that and that goes to you first, and you put that in another account, and that's money that you're not going to spend on anything. You're going to invest it.
That you're one of the 1 out of 10 people who can answer that question correctly.
Oh my gosh. I got a little ding, ding, ding.
Congratulations, right? Tim. You got it.
Cool.
Well, ring the bell.
All right.
Okay. So when many people, ordinary people, hear familiar information like pay yourself first, they'll make a statement like, oh, I've heard of that, or I know that, or maybe even I've done that. And that's what ordinary people do. They make a statement when they hear familiar information. The attitude of a wealthy person is when they hear familiar information, they ask questions instead, such as, am I doing that? Where would I put the money? When will I begin that? How do I do that in my situation? Who can support me with that? Excuse me. And those questions lead to the answers that create results. So wealthy people have a different attitude, as an example, when they hear familiar information than ordinary people. And they're piles more. And if I lived by all of the 32 that I wrote about in my book, I'd be a billionaire instead of a multimillionaire. So
Yeah.
yeah, you don't need to do them all. Just do a few.
Okay. So attitude, here's something familiar. You got to ask questions, because the questions
Exactly.
are where it's going to lead to the answers that are going to help you be successful.
Exactly correct. And
Okay.
one of the questions you don't ask is why.
Okay.
Like, why don't I have any money? Because that answer just is a continual loop and keeps you in the same place.
Got it. So then we have forms and we have investments. Can you touch
Yep.
on those?
Yes. So the forms are the things most people are already familiar with. Like if you go to the bank and you want a loan, they ask you, well, what do you own and what do you owe? And that way they can determine if they're going to provide the loan to you. Well, when a wealthy person looks at their net worth statement, they're looking for the kind of assets that generate an income, not that just have value in themselves. Like your accountant will say, well, your house is an asset. And Robert Kiyosaki says, no, your house is not an asset. It's a liability.
Yeah.
Why? Because you pay property taxes, you have maintenance and repairs, you have insurance, you have utilities. Your house sucks up money. It's not generating money unless you're using it for an Airbnb or you've got roommates or something.
Yeah.
But, okay, yeah, it grows in value. So what? If you sell it, you still need somewhere to live. So that's why the house you live in is not an asset. Real estate outside of that is. And so the wealthy person's looking on their net worth statement for the things that generate an income, not just how much things are worth.
Got it. So the investments side of it are things that are generating income.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
And the last one, which stands for investments, a lot of people, most ordinary people think, wealthy people, they need to invest in stocks, bonds, or mutual funds. Wealthy people are not limited to that at all. As an example, if you just look at the real estate category alone, they could have residential multi-units. They could have an office building. They could have an office park. They could have triple net leases. They could be doing trust deeds. They could do real estate investment trusts. I mean, just the real estate category alone has so many different options.
Yeah.
And then there's oil and gas deals. There's peer-to-peer lending. Just so much stuff.
Yeah. So if, let's say I'm paying myself first,
Mm-hmm.
I've got this, I'm taking this money off the top. How do I know I'm spending that money or investing that money in the right places?
Well, it sounds like you're asking two different questions.
Okay.
One of them is, how do you know if you're putting your investments in the right place? And the other is, how do you know if you're spending the money that's left over in the right place?
Got it. Yep. Can we break those down?
Yes. So we're going to talk about the money that's left over. How do you know if you're spending it in the right place? And how do you measure the return on that money? And it's kind of simple. It gets back to what wealthy people do, and it's asking questions. As an example, if you're investing in some software to grow your business, is it producing the result that you intended to produce or was promised? Or let's say you're eating out and you could say, well, did I get the level of pleasure for this meal based on the amount of money I spent? So when you're asking questions, and it doesn't matter if it's personal or business, you get the answers of, is this the right place to be putting your money? And I've asked that question for my business, and I've made significant changes. I've asked it for myself personally. As an example, on a personal level, I looked at buying gasoline and driving a car and saying, am I getting the level of pleasure driving this car and paying this much for gasoline? And the answer was no. So instead, I go in Los Angeles, you can get away with riding a motorcycle. The weather's great all the time. I'm not worried about the traffic. I'm not worried about the parking. I get far more miles per gallon and I enjoy it more.
Yeah.
So my car sits much more than most people's cars because I only take it if I have to use a car.
Got it. So it's looking when you're spending money, it's looking at whether you're getting the return that you should or that you expected. And sometimes that return is not necessarily going to be a return of money. It's, when you're spending things, I'm spending money on vacation.
Yep.
Did I get the relaxation, the peace of mind that I expected from that?
Exactly. And did I get the level of pleasure
Yeah.
from where I just spent my money? And you can use a little scale. I use a positive sign or a negative sign or a zero, meaning, yes, and not only did I enjoy this, I want to spend more money in this area. Or negative, like I just didn't get the value. Like I don't get the value out of going to the grocery store and buying groceries. I'd rather eat out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Got it.
Yeah. And the zero means it's neutral. The amount of money I'm spending is just fine. I don't need to spend more. I don't want to spend less. And and I put this, I actually have a spending register that I use, and that's where I make these notations, and it keeps me on track.
Got it. I think a lot of people don't do a very good job of tracking, their money and where they're at. What kind of tips do you have to help people track their money and wealth?
Well, there's two ways to do it. And first, let me agree with you. You're correct. People aren't very good at it. A lot of people don't want to look at where the money's going. It's overwhelming. And for me, the foundations were missing. I literally did not know how to create a personal or business budget, which is not being taught as a certified financial planner. It's not taught in my coursework. It's not even taught to certified public accountants. I mean, it's obscene. So it's really, when it comes to, if you really want to dial it in, every time you spend money, you write it down. And it doesn't matter if it's in your business, and it doesn't matter if it's personal. And if you're not writing it down, you could be putting it in an app on your phone. There's like between 600 and 1,000 apps you could get to track money if you have a smartphone. You find the one that works for you. For me, it's just as easy to write it down on a little register that looks like an old-fashioned checkbook register. And I mean, it creates the consciousness, and creating the consciousness is where it starts. I mean, Mike Michalowicz, who wrote the book Profit First,
yes,
talked about how many millions of dollars he lost because he wasn't paying attention to it.
It kind of makes me think of like how many people have recurring bills that are automatically charged to their credit card that they just totally forget about.
Yep.
Whereas even if it's recurring, if you're tracking it and it's being put down on paper or in Quicken or QuickBooks or whatever you use, the actual act of putting that down gives you the recognition of, oh yeah, I am paying for that every month. Am I getting the satisfaction or the return that I expected from it?
That's so perfect, because I'm actually looking at that for myself right now with a group that I participate in that's $400 a month. And I'm saying, am I getting $400 a month of value from this group? And the answer is no, because I'm changing directions, and that's a $400 expense that I'm cutting out.
Well, and like I've heard people talk about, yes, you need to watch your expenses, but
but how? How do you do it?
Well, but here's the thing, like I've heard some people say, hey, it's great to watch your expenses, but is saving, $5 a week on whatever gonna make you rich? And they say, no, you're better off focusing on, producing income or finding ways to produce income. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you for asking that, because what I've discovered is that when people only focus on generating more income and not the expenses, they can outspend the amount of money they're earning. That's what happened to me. When I was teaching school, When I got out of college, I was short by $100 a month. I went into sales. I doubled my income and I was short 200 a month. And when I passed 100,000 a year, I was short 2,000 a month.
Yeah.
Making more money was not the answer. But what turned around, when it turned around, is when I focused on the expenses first and growing the income second. And if you do it in that order, then it turns out so much better. So it's not one or the other, it's which one is first. And it's control the expenses first and then grow the income.
Got it. Because then as you grow the income, you've got the discipline to not just spend everything that you're making or more. Right. It kind of goes back to, people, hey, I'm in this house, I'm making more money. Cool. I can buy a bigger house. So they buy a bigger house and they get a new car. And all of a sudden that extra money they made, they're spending it all.
Yeah. Or more than that. Exactly. Yeah. Right. You're right on track, Tim. You got it.
Got it. So Rennie, you had touched on this a little bit, but let's dig a little bit deeper into this about, what are the types of investments that the average person overlooks that are out there?
Yeah, well, it depends on where they're starting. In other words, when you're starting, a savings account may be the most appropriate. It's not even an investment. It's a parking place.
Yeah.
And then from there, then maybe it would be stocks, individual stocks. And what would be the stocks that you would choose? The ones that you're familiar with. As an example, when doctors begin investing, they usually invest in companies that provide some of the medical equipment that they use, or the companies that they know are doing cutting edge research in the medical field, because they're up on that. And they have a high idea of what the likelihood of success would be for those kinds of companies. For an ordinary consumer, it could be, well, what are the products you consume that you like? Do you like the products Procter & Gamble puts out? Why not buy those? Because you use them, other people use them, you're familiar with them. And so those are the good things to do. So when you're talking about the types of investments, right now I was just covering stocks. But then there are other things like peer-to-peer lending. Most people say, well, what is that? Well, it's simple. The bank takes money in as a savings and people go to the bank to borrow. And they make money on the difference between what they're paying the saver versus what they're charging the borrower. That spread is where they make their money. Well, that's available to individuals as well. There are platforms where you can do peer-to-peer lending. If you wanted to borrow money, Tim, to improve your house, you could go to a platform, and I might be one of the people on that platform who loans money out. And the loans are constructed where, let's say you wanted $2,500. You might get $25 from 100 different people.
Yeah.
Which means if you defaulted on it, okay, fine, I lost $25, big deal. But the interest rates are like in the 6, 8, 10, 12% range, depending on what your credit is. So if I were to put let's say my money in the bank and I'm getting 1%, or I put my money in this platform and I'm getting 8%, most people aren't aware they even exist. When it comes to buying real estate, this gets back to the view wealthy people have on it. Let's say you want to buy a second home to rent out versus a vacation home that you're hardly ever going to use.
Yeah.
Okay. So you walk in and it's a nice neighborhood, but it has the carpet is frayed and the walls have the peeling paint and the faucets are dripping and the grass out front is dead. And you say, I don't want to buy this house. Well, the wealthy person says, hey, it's in a great neighborhood and I can take care of these cosmetic things and that'll increase the value substantially. And that's just what I did with apartment buildings. We bought mismanaged apartment buildings that had deferred maintenance. We turned them around. We made a lot of money at that. So the wealthy person looks at, well, what can I do to improve it? And the ordinary person looks at it and says, oh, it's a mess. I don't want it. So yeah. It could be a second home. It could be real estate. It could be individual stocks. I mean, peer-to-peer lending. These are the kinds of things that the average person might overlook.
Do you think, well, and there's, the audience that we're talking to is primarily business owners. I think a lot of people also overlook the ability to invest in businesses,
Oh God, yeah. Well, not only in other businesses, but even in their own business. And I had a
Yep.
funny conversation with someone exactly along those lines. He wanted to invest some money in the stock market because he thought that's what other wealthy people were doing. And in the conversation, we were talking about, well, what's he doing in his business now? And he advertises on Facebook. And for every dollar he spends in advertising, he
Yep.
gets a $2 to $3 return. And he does this on a monthly basis. Okay. So on a monthly basis, he takes $1, and let's say he only gets $2 back. That's 100% per month by investing in his business.
Yeah.
But he's thinking about investing in the stock market where he might have 10 or 20% per year.
Yep.
So it's sort of like, well, would you rather have 20% per year or 100% per month?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's because the first business that I was a partner in was a wholesale distribution company. And we had other partners that had similar businesses. And that came up all the time, where some of the guys were like, look, why should I take my money and put it somewhere else when I can put it back into my distribution company and get 30-40% return on the equity that I have in the company? It's like, I'm not going to get that somewhere else. So why not put it there? And I understand that. At the same time, I think there is some validity in having diversification, right? So
Yes.
how do you balance that where you go, hey, look, I know that I can get a way better return putting this back into my company, but having all my money in one place is probably not the best idea. How do you balance that diversification?
There are two things. One of them is, you brought up the correct word, which is diversification. And when I owned a pension administration company, I noticed the most financially successful business owners were people who generated a great income from their business and invested in it, as well as taking some of that money and investing it outside of their business. And generally, it was in real estate. So they may have bought their own building and land for their manufacturing company.
Yeah.
They may have bought an apartment building outside. And so one of the answers is, yes, diversify. And the second answer is, the money outside of their business was invested and was creating passive returns. They didn't have to do anything for it.
Yeah.
And that's an important component, meaning that the tenants are paying the rent on, let's say, the apartment building they bought. They're not having to oversee it. They're not having to be involved in it. They've got a management company taking care of it, where if it's in their business, they're keeping a close eye on it and they're working with it to produce that result. So it's diversification and also looking at the passive nature of the investment outside.
Awesome stuff. I appreciate you sharing that. Before we jumped on, we were talking a little bit about, if you don't have your personal financial house in order as a business owner, it's totally unrealistic to think that your business financial house is going to be in order. What money and financial habits do you feel are most important for business owners that's really going to help them get to where they want to be?
Yeah, it's interesting. What I found translates so well is when you have the skills to handle your money on a personal level, it gets transferred to handling it on the business level. So it's actually doing it on the personal level first, and it's easy to transfer to the business level. And again, it gets back to wealth creation. It's a team sport. You don't have to do this yourself. The business owner doesn't have to sit at the computer and input into QuickBooks. They can have a bookkeeper or an assistant do that. What they're responsible for is looking at the numbers and reviewing them. and then asking the questions, is this where I want the money to go? Is this the level of profit I want? Am I taking the profit out first? Am I paying myself first? Those are the questions, whether it's a personal level or a business level, that make all the difference in the world.
Got it. So wealth creation is a team sport. I love that. I've never heard anybody actually say that. And it's getting into the habit of tracking things.
Again, and
Right?
you don't have to do it by yourself. That's the
Yeah.
point of having a bookkeeper, having an accountant, having a CPA, just having an assistant who on the calendar on a regular basis says every month, every week, every 3 months, every quarter, whatever, we're going to sit down and we're going to review what's happened and look at where we're going.
Yeah. This has been awesome, Rennie. Do you have any last minute words of wisdom, things you want to share or leave us with here today?
Well, I've said it a few times. And, when I say wealth creation is a team sport, what I'm getting at is you could have partners in your business. You could have a co-owner. You could have a business coach. You could have other family members or other people that you're associating with. I mean, it's the old Jim Rohn expression that your income will be the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so that could be a part of your support. I have been coached by another business coach, and I coach him, and we've been doing that for each other for 25 years.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
So that's, and we don't pay. I mean, I don't pay him. He doesn't pay me, but we're excellent at what we do and we support each other.
It's awesome. If you're watching, listening, and you're having some challenges, building that wealth that you have the ability to, I would highly recommend you check out what Rennie's doing at Wealth on Any Income. We did put the link down here, wealthonanyincome.com/TEDx. What are they going to find when they go to that link, Rennie?
They'll find 2 things. One is my TEDx talk, which talks about how we've been indoctrinated to believe it's better to be poor than wealthy, from society, from fairy tales, from books, from Hollywood movies, you name it. And the second thing is the roadmap to complete financial choice. It's a 9-step roadmap to go from wherever you are to a place where you have complete financial choice. You can choose to work, choose not to work, choose to donate your time to charities, whatever you want. I call that financial freedom. I've trademarked complete financial choice.
Fantastic stuff. And guys, remember, 100% of the profits that Rennie makes from Wealth on Any Income are going to charities. So he's doing this because he wants to help people.
We didn't
and I know
talk
you
about
want to
my
touch
charity.
touch on the charity real quick before
Shelter
we
to Soldier.
before we sign off.
Yeah. They rescue dogs from environments where they could die or be euthanized, and they are trained as service animals for soldiers who've come back with PTSD or traumatic brain injury or other issues. And the suicide rate among returning veterans is 22 a day, almost 1 an hour. But not one service member who's gotten their service dog has committed suicide. So this charity saves 2 lives at a time. Dogs that could have been euthanized and soldiers that could have committed suicide.
Extremely worthy cause. And I can tell you, my wife and I were watching a show. I can't remember what show it was, but it was about service dogs. And they were like 2 or 3 of the people that they were following were veterans. It was amazing to see how that service dog changed their life. So I can only imagine how much good they're doing in the world. So,
yeah.
Rennie, thank you so much for being here and sharing all this fantastic stuff to help us level up our financial decision making. I know people will get a ton of value from this. Again, I am Tim Fitzpatrick with Rialto Marketing. If you want to gain clarity on where to focus your marketing right now to get the best return, hop on over to our website, rialtomarketing.com. That's RIALTO marketing.com. click on the get a free consultation button. You will get a ton of value and walk away knowing exactly where you need to focus right now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Till next time, take care.